There's one marketing gimmick that Marvel Comics do that is so stupid, so asinine, and so hurtful to their own business strategy that not even DC Comics have tried to replicate it. It is the relaunch of an ongoing series with the same creative team, specifically the same writer. Now, DC is going to keep Jorge Jimenez, the artist on Batman, for #1 with new writer Matt Fraction, but Matt Fraction, by all evidence, is not going to be continuing on the story from Chip Zdarsky. But Marvel loves to do this. It really started, I believe, with Captain Marvel, where they kept rebooting the series but keeping the same writer. They've done it on Daredevil. Now they're doing it on Fantastic Four. And it is the most useless sales gimmick in the history of comic books. It makes no sense whatsoever, and it makes even less sense on this one because the exact storyline that we're reading right now is the launching off point for the #1. But with the same writer, why would there need to be a #1? Marvel has decided to tie into that concept of the Fantastic Four being in different time periods with a brand new volume of the Fantastic Four ongoing series launching this July, just ahead of the highly anticipated film's release, with the 4 members of the Fantastic Four split into 4 very different time periods and forced to go on solo journeys to reunite. So that is the basic bare bones of what this Fantastic Four relaunch is going to be right around the time of the movie. I can understand from that perspective. You got a movie coming out, you want to have a new #1, perhaps people will be more interested to come and support the project or whatever. Okay, I can get that. Maybe you're changing the direction of the Fantastic Four in the comic books to more mimic what they're doing in the movies. And yes, they are playing a little bit with time, but in this case, all 4 members will be in 4 different time periods. There's no indication that's actually what's going on in the movies there. And they're relaunching it basically to coincide with the movie, which I think is silly, but almost understandable in that respect. Now, as far as this Fantastic Four ongoing is doing, Fantastic Four, written by Ryan North, is 30 issues in, I believe, which is far longer than I ever would have anticipated an ongoing series from Marvel written by Ryan North to actually make. So it's actually doing a pretty good job. Is it still in the top 20? No. Is it in the top 50? Not anymore, but it's just barely outside. The sales are actually kind of still there. And to get to 30 issues at Marvel Comics these days is almost like a miracle. Like, you really made it, kid. It's almost like a 300 issue run of Spider-Man or X-Men or something like that these days. But there's no reason to relaunch this, especially with the details I'm about to give you. The new series will be written by current writer of Fantastic Four, Ryan North, who is also in charge of Marvel's current Fantastic Four-centric crossover event, One World Under Doom. And the series will be drawn by superstar comic artist Humberto Ramos, who is best known for his various Spider-Man and X-Men runs at Marvel. And this will be his first turn drawing the Fantastic Four series. Now, that is admittedly awesome news. That's actually badass news. Humberto Ramos is an absolutely fantastic artist. I wish he was doing some more Strange Academy, but they've kind of destroyed that concept. So maybe there's no going back to Strange Academy for Humberto Ramos and Scotty Young at this point. Putting him on Fantastic Four, I think, makes a whole lot of sense. You know, Carlos Gomez, who's been doing most of the Fantastic Four art for at least for the last year, has done a good job. In fact, I wouldn't mind seeing him stick around, but I think Carlos Gomez has done a fine job on Fantastic Four. I wouldn't mind seeing him stick around as the artist. You know, it wouldn't bother me at all, but Humberto Ramos is a better artist, and I think he'll do a better job. It'll look really cool with Humberto Ramos. But I don't think Humberto Ramos arriving is enough to warrant a relaunch on a series that's doing perfectly fine. Especially the fact that you do have One World Under Doom right now, written by Ryan North. The main series that's tying into it is Fantastic Four. And you would imagine One World Under Doom, if events were working correctly, would actually encourage new people to come and pick up the book and be a jumping on point. Why would you then invite them to jump off at your jumping on point? Like, the timing really doesn't make sense whatsoever. Maybe if you rebooted it right before the event, it would make more sense. But rebooting it right after the big event, the biggest opportunity of Ryan North's life, probably the biggest thing the Fantastic Four have done in comic books in like a decade. No, probably even longer than that. I think it's Secret Wars. Yes, they did have Empire, but nobody cared about that. It wasn't really all that impactful. Doom is a bigger villain than anything that was going on in an Empire. And, you know, if One World Under Doom is successful, in theory, people should give Ryan North more credit, more credence, and be more interested to check out Fantastic Four and realize, oh, wow, he's already got 32 issues or 34 issues or whatever. Let me go back to the beginning and read up on it. And I think most people will be perfectly fine with it. I don't think it's a great series. I do think they've had a couple of issues that have been particularly bad. In fact, the first one that's tying into One World Under Doom is not good at all. But it's been enjoyable. You know, it's one-shot stories, mostly focusing in on the exploits of Johnny Storm, which is kind of strange. You know, normally it's Ben-centric or it's Reed-centric or it's Sue-centric. Now it's Johnny-centric more because I think he's able to do more jokey stuff because Ryan North fancies himself more of a comic. When I say comic, I mean comedy type writer than like a normal, you know, action adventure type writer. That's why I don't think he makes a whole lot of sense even for One World Under Doom. But in theory, if it was working on, it should draw more eyes on the book and make it more popular. And now you're inviting people to leave as soon as they discover the book that they might like. Kind of a strange thing here. And then when you hear what's actually going to be the impetus for the new series and the relaunch itself, it gets even dumber. Beginning during the events of One World Under Doom, also helmed by North, the Fantastic Four face Doom in a fight to save the world until it suddenly goes catastrophically wrong, sending them to 4 different eras in Earth's history. Alone and isolated in wildly different time periods, Reed, Johnny, Ben, and Sue all have to fight to survive. Their only hope is to reach the Forever Stone, a massive dense granite that happens to be one of the longest lasting rocks on the planet, which, through a combination of obscurity and raw geologic luck, has stayed both intact and accessible for most of Earth's history. So apparently they're going to be combined like with the Forever Stone in different time periods, trying to make it back to where they were. You know, the Fantastic Four at its heart is an adventure book. You know, that kind of makes sense. But what doesn't make sense is that it's all spawning out of One World Under Doom. And the main tie-in into that is the current Ryan North Fantastic Four. So you're going to continue the story that's going on there and reboot it with the exact same creator to a number 1 issue, even though the story's continuing. Why would you go from issue 34 to issue number 1 on a continuing story arc, where all the events that lead to issue 1 literally happen in issue 34? I could understand if at the end of One World Under Doom, the Fantastic Four had to sacrifice themselves. The entire 616 thought they were dead. And it was revealed on the final page that, in fact, they had been, you know, cast back in time to 4 different time periods alone to try to make it back. And then it says to be continued. And then 3 months later or 4 months later, a new writer came in after, you know, it was discovered by somebody, you know, within the Marvel Comics universe, you know, Bruce Banner, when he's not Hulk or whatever, doing something really smart, or Tony Stark, that they're still there. We need to get them back together. And then you had a new writer that continued on. Then, yes, it would make sense to go to a number 1. But they're not taking 3 months off. They're not taking 4 months off. They're not changing the writers. So it literally does make no sense. It's just a stupid cash grab. And the problem with this is it's proven over time, the more that you go to this stupid cash grab, relaunch, recycle, reboot fucking thing that they're doing, it just gets shorter and shorter. They're very lucky that they've gotten over 30 issues of Fantastic Four out of this run. But with what they're doing right now and with the event leading into this, they could probably get it to 50 and maybe build up a little bit of goodwill with people to think, hey, maybe Marvel won't reboot everything back to a number 1 all the time. Or they won't do needless reboots back to number 1s because, you know, issue what should be 35, and I'm only guessing that it's 34 to number 1. It could be 35 number 1 or 36 number 1. I'm just throwing that number out there. But I'm only guessing that instead of paying $4 for issue 35, you're going to have to pay $6 for issue number 1 because it's a number 1. It's a relaunch, even though it's not a relaunch of anything. It's a continuation of the same story with a new comic book artist. It's the same old stupid Marvel stuff that not even DC will try these dumbass gimmicks because all they do is basically turn off readers and give them a reason to walk away, when in theory, One World Under Doom should be the reason to come and be checking it out and hopefully reinvigorate the sales and maybe jump it back into the top 20, you know, instead of just being outside the top 50, which it is right now, at least with the very tenuous numbers that we do have. So I definitely want to know what you guys think. Do you think it's smart to continuously reboot these things, even with the same writer? Remember when they did that with, what is it, Devil's Reign for Daredevil? Marco Cicchetto, Chip Zdarsky on Daredevil. They get to Devil's Reign. The next issue is a number 1, but it's still Marco Cicchetto and Chip Zdarsky, and it's a continuation of everything that happened in Devil's Reign. What is the point? The point is just to get back to a number 1 so they can overcharge you for a comic book with no real value to it, or no real extra value to it. I guess that's a better way to put it. It should just be another $4 issue, but that's not enough. They've got to take it out of you. They got to take another, 50% overhead out of your pocket for no reason whatsoever, with something that, quite frankly, is far more successful than it has any right to be. Ryan North is not a particularly good comic book writer. He has zero track record of success at Marvel. He's finally got something that's working, and now you're going to cut the balls right out from underneath him. And the sales are going to drop far quicker on this relaunch than they would have if you just continued on. And that's what I'm saying. But I don't know. This stuff annoys me more than you can possibly imagine, but I do have to read a lot more comic books than most people. I have to cover all the news and keep up to date with it like most people don't have to. And maybe I'm just starting to take it personally. But I think there's a lot of people out there that also hate this stuff. Definitely hope to hear from you guys there. If you would like to support the mission here at Thinking Critical YouTube to provide honest perspective, awesome news coverage, awesome reviews, and all that kind of stuff, help us keep the lights on, keep the videos flowing, the best place to do that is Thinking Critical Patreon. There's a link in the video description. There's a button right here. Hope to see you there very soon. We got lots of extra bonus podcasts, videos, stuff like that, polls. Hope to see you very, very soon.